Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on LinkRunner AT Reinvented, Next Generation Network and Cable Testers. My name is Julio Petrovitch. I'm Product Manager at NetAlly. Today, streaming live from the UETN conference at Salt Lake City. And with me, we got a very super special guest, Mr. Mike Pennacchi. Hey, Mike, how you been?
Doing great.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I know you have some fun stuff to show us a little later regarding the new solutions from NetAlly, the LinkRunner or the next generation LinkRunner ATs. But before we go there, a few housekeeping things, guys, so everyone is on the same page. Just in case you're wondering, yes, we are recording this session. So if you want to watch it again later, or you know someone that was not able to join us today, they can always watch the recording. You should be getting an email after the webinar with the link to that recording. And besides that, we like to keep these sessions interactive. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. Feel free to type them into the Q&A section. I'll be watching those. Not only that, helping us here today, we also got Mr. Dan Klinke. So if I'm talking and I miss one of the questions, he'll be helping us answer those questions in the background too. So don't be shy about asking questions. We'll try to keep it as interactive as possible. Also, another thing, you may notice that there's some information on the attachments section. So if you want more information about the new generation link runners that we'll be talking about today, you can find those there. Or of course, you could go to our website. Well, anyway, without further preamble, let's get this started. So LinkRunner has been the world's most trusted network tester for over 20 years. If I remember correctly, it's more like 22 years. And there's been multiple generations of LinkRunner. There was the original LinkRunner, there was the LinkRunner Pro, there was the LinkRunner Duo, and then 12 years ago, we released the LinkRunner AT 1000 and the LinkRunner AT 2000 models, which are one of our most popular products. Then on June 3rd, basically last week during Cisco Live, NetAlly announced the availability of the next generation copper and fiber Ethernet testers, or the next generation link runners, the LinkRunner AT 3000 and the LinkRunner AT 4000. And before we show you live how they look, because I don't want to really like bore you with a bunch of slideware, let me give you a quick overview about what each model does and what they're about. And then afterwards, we'll move on to a live demonstration with Mike, and he'll show us real detail or live how these products work. So let's start first with the LinkRunner AT 3000. So the 3000 is what we call a next generation copper and fiber Ethernet AutoTester. And for those of you familiar with the LinkRunner family, the 3000 model is basically the next generation or the replacement for the 1000 and the 2000 models. So basically, it was designed for technicians and engineers who need fast and comprehensive validation of copper and fiber network links. And of course, it includes powerful network connectivity troubleshooting. So all that functionality you're familiar with on the LinkRunner AT 1000 and 2000 is available on the 3000. But now we add more. So yes, you still have the link validation part, the connectivity troubleshooting part. You still can generate reports to document moves, adds, and changes. You still have the auto test, but now you have an improved version of the auto test, and Mike will be showing us that in a few moments. Not only that, where the LinkRunner AT 1000 and 2000 were able to help you validate link speeds up to 1 gig. Now the 3000 model allows you to validate link speeds up to 10 gig. Now allow me to stop there here pretty quickly, basically just to explain that. So the LinkRunner AT 3000 and the 4000 for that matter they still are 1 gig testers. So they're copper and fiber testers up to 1 gig. Still, now they have the ability of not only testing speeds or throughput up to 1 gig, but they can also detect if speeds or multi-gig speeds are available. So if you connect to a port and that port is supporting, or let's say 2.5 gig or 5 gig or 10 gig, the new link runners can now tell you that. So they're not limited to only seeing 1 gig or verifying 1 gig link speeds anymore. Of course, you also have VLAN ID, but most importantly, the new models also include VLAN monitoring. So you can now monitor multiple VLANs. And we'll be looking at an example of that in a few moments. Another big change between the 3000 and the older models, 1000, 2000, is that where the previous generation of the LinkRunner tools perform a PoE test up to 30 watts, now the LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000 can go up to 90 watts or UPoE. So if you started using higher power because of those new fancy access points you're installing, or maybe you have other services or devices that require higher power or power beyond 30 watts, now you can verify that too with your LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000. Of course, and I already mentioned this, so it's no secret anymore, both the LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000 now support copper and fiber testing, different, for example, from the 1000 model that only used to support copper testing. So now you have both copper and fiber on both models, the 3000 and 4000. Most importantly, not only can you use them to validate signal strength power measurements for the optic link, but you can now also perform SFP diagnostics using the 3000 and 4000. And again, that's something that Mike will be showing us in a few moments. So you guys can see the real thing instead of just believing what I'm showing here on the slideware. Meanwhile, the 4000. So the 4000 model includes everything that's available on the 3000. But now it adds more advanced troubleshooting functionality. And that's why we call it an advanced network and cable tester. Basically, it's a cable and network tester for multi-gig and base T and fiber Ethernet networks. But now it also includes comprehensive network topology mapping and automated problem detection, or again, more in-depth troubleshooting and analysis. So it provides the same deep visibility and diagnostics that you're used to, but now it also, different from the 3000 model, it includes packet captures. It also allows you to discover all the devices of the network. So for those of you that are familiar with some of our other products, like the Etherscope, the LinkRunner 10 gig, the AirCharge 3, or even the Cyberscope, you may remember that there's like a discovery app. Well, that's available on the LinkRunner AT 4000 model. And basically, it allows you to use different discovery methods to not only see the information about the switch and port you're connected to, but other devices around the network. It could be servers, routers, gateways, Wi-Fi access points, and so on. And again, we'll be seeing a little more about that in a few moments. And then, of course, as I mentioned, all the same functionality that the 3000 supports is included. So speed validation up to 10 gigs, PoE test up to 90 watts, VLAN ID, VLAN monitoring, and more. As for hardware, so this is basically how the LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000 look like. Notice that the form factor of both models is shared, similar to the 1000 and 2000, where they looked almost identical. Only difference is that the 1000 model did not include the fiber port. But in this case, both the 3000 and 4000 models from the outside look the same. So on the top, you'll see that they both have an RJ45 port. You can see it over here, and a fiber test port. Notice that the two ports on the top of the unit are used for testing. You can also use them for connectivity. So those are the test and connectivity ports. Then on the side, you saw it there as it passed by me. We also have a wire map port. So think of it as an integrated wire view on the unit. And this is pretty cool because similar to the 1000 and 2000 models, it allows you to test patch cords without having to use a wire mapper or a far-end device. Basically, you can plug one side of the patch cord top of the unit, and then the other side of the patch cord on the side of the unit, and now you can run a test and validate the that patch cord, detect faults, distance to fault, if it's open, shorts, grounds, etc. Basically, you can run a TDR on that patch cord without having to use a wire view. Then you may have also noticed on the left side that there's multiple USB ports. There's a USB-A port, which can be used for connectivity. And this is very important because different from the older models, now you can expand the functionality of both the 3000 and 4000 models by plugging in different types of USB adapters. And this basically allows you to expand the functionality of the unit. And Mike will be showing some examples of this later, but you could do anything from plugging a USB Wi-Fi adapter in there, and now you'll get Wi-Fi connectivity. And using third-party apps, and we'll talk about that a little more in a moment, you can also get a basic Wi-Fi visibility or testing functionality. You could also use it to plug, let's say, a USB fiber inspection camera. Or you could connect a Bluetooth keyboard or a Bluetooth headset or something else. Basically, the idea is that you can like add modules to the unit and other functionality, but now USB based. You also may have noticed a USB-C port. That port can be used for both charging and also connectivity. Talking about charging, battery life is about 9 hours, closer to 10 if you ask me. Notice that battery life on the older models was about 6 hours. Then charge time is about 3 hours. But most importantly is that now you can also charge the battery via PoE. So you do not need to plug the USB-C charger to a unit to charge the battery. While you're testing different ports with PoE, the battery will be charged. So you have two options to charge a unit via PoE or via USB-C. Oh, one little detail regarding the USB-C charger, now that we're talking about that. Notice that it's not like a custom-made or special USB-C charger. Technically, you could use any phone charger. So if you have a USB-C charger for your phone or your laptop or your tablet, you can use those to charge the unit. Or in reverse, you could use the charger that comes with the unit to charge your phone or tablet. Then another big thing that you will notice is the big touchscreen. So different from the 1000 and 2000 models, which had like a small 2-inch LCD screen, and then you had a bunch of little buttons or a touchpad that you had to press to move around the UI or the user interface. Now you have a touchscreen like most other smart devices these days. And you'll be like, well, that's not that impressive after all. Almost everything has a touchscreen these days. But think of it when you compare it against the 2000 and 1000 models. And again, Mike will be showing this a little later, but just try to type 2 words or a comment with 2 words on the old models. And you'll be like, left, 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 down, okay, right, 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 up, okay. And by the time you finish typing the 2-word comment that you want, you may have pressed on the buttons hundreds of times. Meanwhile, while using a touchscreen, it's a lot faster. So it's something I guess we've gotten used to, but it's a very convenient and makes your workflow a lot easier and faster. Okie doke, so that's the hardware in there and how the units look like. And as for common features, and I'll go through this very quickly, guys, because Mike will be showing this live. So I don't want to bore you with a bunch of slideware in here. We'll like to see the real thing. But features that are shared by both models, the 3000 and the 4000. Of course, you have the auto test. So you can perform a comprehensive network link validation that will help you validate not only information about the port you're connected to, but the DHCP, DNS, gateway information, and so on. And this auto test does more than the version that's included on the 1000 and 2000. And again, we'll see that in a few moments. Then you have um, nearest connected switch information and configuration. So basically a switch test that you're familiar with on the 1000 and 2000 models, and we can see it here on the screen. It is also available on the 3000 and 4000 models. You have the cable test, of course, so you still can validate cabling for proper termination, test for length, miss wires like shorts, grounds, distance to fault, etc. So basically the TDR for cable testing is still there. Another common feature between the 3000 and 4000 models, and I mentioned this very quickly earlier, you now also have the ability of expanding the functionality of the unit by installing third-party apps. So if you have, let's say, a configuration app that you use to access your switches, you could use that. Or you could use a printer app, or maybe it's a camera app for that fiber inspection camera that you plan to use. Or maybe it's just a file sharing app. Basically, now you have the option, similar to some of our other products, to download apps into a unit and add extra functionality that that's not included by default with the product. Something that you couldn't do with the older models, where basically you were limited to the functionality that was included. Of course, now you also have the ping and TCP test app, and you'll be like, well, we could do a ping test on the older models as part of the auto test, and that would be correct. But now you can do it separately, so you don't need to go to the auto test and set up a ping test against a specific target. Now you can run a separate ping or TCP connect test. And not only that, it's not just a quick test of a few seconds to validate response. Now you can leave it running over time up to 24 hours and see how that response time changes. And we'll be seeing an example of that in a few moments. You can also use both the 3000 and 4000 as reflectors for a performance test. So if you want to run a throughput test up to 1 gig from point A to point B on the network, you can do that. Basically, you'll have the LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000 on point A, and one of the other NetAlly tools. It could be an Etherscope, it could be a LinkRunner 10 gig, it could be a Cyberscope on point B. They will talk to each other and perform a throughput test or a speed test of your network. One that's very super important, and again, Mike will be showing this to us in a few moments, is remote control. Basically, with the older models, there was no way to share the screen unless you were using a camera in front of it just to show the screen. Now you have remote control access to the units. So if some of your team members are not as experienced as, let's say, you are when it comes to copper and fiber testing, and need some guidance, but you can't just like go there and be with them all the time, you can just tell them, okay, take this LinkRunner AT with you, plug it into the cable, and then remotely you can take control of the unit and run the test yourself. Or you can tell them or teach them how to run the test and guide them through the process so they can do it themselves next time. And then I already mentioned this one, but using the USB ports, you could also just plug in a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth USB adapter into the unit, and that will give you Wi-Fi connectivity that you can use for just remote control and visibility or for testing purposes. As for the 4000 model, then it includes everything we talked about, but now it also includes all this extra functionality, and we'll be seeing some of it again today. One, network discovery. So as I mentioned, it will use different techniques like SNMP, um, MDNS, etc., to discover all the devices on the network, not only the switch and port you're connected to. Yes, it will use EDP, CDP, LDP to discover switch port information, but now uses a lot more to see everything else out there. And that will allow you to generate a topology map like the one you can see here on the right side. It basically shows you where everything is at, where it's connected, how it's configured, any problems with those devices. So it now goes more in depth. Not only does it show you information about one port and one switch, but it goes and gives you information about multiple devices throughout the network. You also have a switch or path test. So basically, it will show you the path from point A to point B, how many hops. It's basically layer 2 and layer 3 type of test. It will also show you utilization, if there's any misconfigurations on that path. Let's say a switch, for example, someone misconfigured it to 100 meg or instead of 1 gig. Well, that does happen, and you may be wondering why your connection speeds are so slow. Well, this is a very useful test for path analysis, and we'll be seeing that later today too. We also include on the 4000 model an iPerf test. So if you like using iPerf for your throughput or speed testing, basically you can use the 4000 model as an iPerf client and then use your own iPerf server on the other side or on the point to which you want to test your throughput. Packet captures are also included up to 1 gig on the 4000 model. And another thing that's important to keep in mind is that the first year of Ally Care support is also included with the 4000 model. Okie doke. So one thing you may be wondering about before we go into the demonstration in reality is I'll go through this very quickly because Mike will be showing us this live. Is okay. So those AT3000 and 4000 models look pretty cool, but how do they actually compare to, let's say, an AT2000 model? Well, here's just a very high-level list of some of the most important differences. Notice on our website, and it's also attached to the, or part of the attachments for this webcast, we have a detailed list. It's like 2-3 pages long that shows you all the differences between all the models. We call it an upgrade guide, but it will show you the difference between the 1000, 2000, the G2, 3000, 4000, even the 10G. So if you want the full list, just feel free to refer to that attachment. But here, quick overview. So yes, they're both the 2000 and 3000 are 1 gig testers. They both include an auto test, although, as I mentioned, the auto test on the 3000 model has more functionality, and Mike will be showing us that in a moment. You have a switch test, cable test, performance test reflector, and then the 3000 starts adding more stuff, like a ping TCP test app, which we mentioned earlier. You have higher class or higher power PoE, 90 watts instead of 30 watts. That also includes UPoE on the 3000 model. VLAN monitoring, link speed detection up to 10 gigs instead of 1 gig like on the 2000 model. If you like using the test targets in the auto test to validate response time and connectivity to other devices or services on the network, well, the 2000 model allows you to use up to 10 IP targets. The 3000 is unlimited. You can add as many targets as you want. Remote visibility and control, and this is one of my favorite ones because it really makes it easy to share the screen and collaborate with others. That's new on the 3000 and 4000 models. Wi-Fi connectivity using a USB adapter, very super convenient when, for example, you're testing a cable, but that cable is not connected to a network. So how do you upload the results to Link Live? How do you share them? Well, that's where a Wi-Fi adapter can help. User interface, we already talked about this, but buttons versus touchscreen. and then third-party apps, which basically allow you to expand the functionality of the unit. So when you think of it, basically the 3000 model when compared to a 2000 does a lot more. But most importantly is that the price of the 3000 model is the same as that of the 2000 model. So you're getting a lot more functionality for the same price. Last, before we move on here pretty quickly to the demonstration, Link Live. Those of you familiar with our solutions may have heard about Link Live. It's our collaboration, reporting, and analysis platform. Basically, now you can use it to save test results from your LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000. You could use it to remote control into the units. You can also use it to generate reports, receive automated emails. So basically, every time you run a test, you'll get an email with the test results. So no need to take your phone out and take a photo of the results on the unit. You can get an email with that, or you can just use your web browser on the unit or the phone to access the results and share them with someone else. You can even use an API. So if you have other systems that you want to feed with the test results, you can use the API on LinkLive to do that too. So basically, full support for the LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000 is now available on LinkLive. Oh, that includes software downloads, updates, and so on. Okie doke. And I think that covers all the slideware. We'll now be moving to the demonstration. Before I do that though, I have a question for you guys. And basically, we're just curious to know, hey, how many of you are actually familiar with the LinkRunner product brand? Sure, it's been out there for, as I mentioned, 22 years if you consider the previous models. But have you ever heard of it? So what we're going to do now, I'll give you 1 minute to answer a very super quick poll question. And then after that, we'll move on to the live demonstration. And the poll is going up live now. And you'll be seeing it on your screen. So feel free to select the answer. Okay, that's interesting responses here. Okay, it's changing quickly. Okay, since we got we got the balance. It was balanced there. Okay, we can see now. It seems like 41% of you guys are familiar with the LinkRunner family, even if it was a yellow and blue version or the previous green version. Yep, as many of you, 23%, also are familiar with the green version. Notice that there used to be two green versions, the NetAlly version and the previous brand. And there's some of you that have never heard of LinkRunner, so hey, you're learning something new today, and you'll be seeing some cool stuff now. Okie doke, so seems like, yep, that's the end of it. I don't see any more movement. So thank you very much, guys, for that information. We were just pretty curious about that. So we're going to close the poll now. And Mike, if you're still there, now I'm going to make you presenter again. So you can actually show us how the new models work and how they compare to the old models.
All right. Thank you, Julio. Welcome. We're going to take a quick look here at some of the different models. I'm going to bring this right over there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over here to the bench. And
Mike, I think you need to start sharing. Okay, we can't see.
Oh,
if you haven't. There we go.
All right. Are you getting the video?
Yes.
Okay. So over here we have some of the older models of the LinkRunner. We've got the LinkRunner. Oh, Well, if we reach over here, I mean, we've got the original LinkRunner, we've got the LinkRunner Pro, and we have the LinkRunner AT2000, the LinkRunner G2, and here is the LinkRunner AT4000. And that's what we're going to be taking an in-depth look at today. As Julio mentioned, in the past, if I wanted to share the screen of my LinkRunner AT2000 with someone, I pretty much had to grab my phone, take a picture of it, and send it to them. If I wanted to share the screen of my LinkRunner G2, there was a really painful way of connecting a serial cable to this and sharing that screen. What we're going to see, and you see it up here on the screen right now, is that with my LinkRunner AT4000, I'm connected into that using VNC. Now, I'm using VNC for this presentation. We can use LinkWare or Link Live to connect into that. And one of the advantages of using Link Live to connect into the LinkRunner AT is the fact that I can have somebody out at a remote site and they can say, hey, Mike, can you look over my shoulder and see what I'm doing? They can invite me to join their organization and I can connect in and see that tester and I even drive that tester from anywhere with a web browser. So
hey,
it's
Mike,
pretty nifty. Yeah.
Your screen on the LinkRunner's kind of halfway moved over for some reason on the video.
Oh.
Almost. Thank you.
Yeah, a little back again, the other side.
That is weird. Hang on, let's see. Let's see if we can fix this.
There you go.
So I've got I've got both an Etherscope and the LinkRunner. I'll tell you what, let me get rid of the Etherscope for right now. Let's share. How's that? Is that better?
Yep, much better now.
All right. So let's come back over here and we're going to focus in on the LinkRunner. You know what? Hang on. Sorry, just getting my screens. Let's take a quick look at how I have this set up real quick before we continue on. We'll get that squared up. So right now, we've got a wired Ethernet and a fiber connection up here on the top, as Julio mentioned. I have a Etamax USB adapter connected in here, and this supports both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So when you see me driving this remotely, what I'm doing is I'm using that Wi-Fi connection right there to connect into it and drive it remotely. I also have this Bluetooth keyboard connected up to it. So if I want to be able to type in, I don't even have to use that touchscreen. I can use that Bluetooth keyboard. So if we come in here and we start taking a look at what we can do, we could go through and we could run example auto tests with the G2 and with the LinkRunner AT2000. But what I want to do is jump straight in and take a look at what we can do with the auto tests on the LinkRunner AT3000 and 4000. So in this case, I've got this connected up to a wired connection. I'm going to hit start and it's going to establish a connection. It's going to show me what link speed I'm connected at. It shows me my VLAN information. It says I'm connected untagged right now, but as Julio mentioned, there is the VLAN monitor. So I can come in here and I can tap on that. And this is going to show me how many packets I see for each one of my different VLANs. So I can get an idea of which VLAN has the most broadcast, multicast, things like that on it. I can hit back. I can come up here, I can look at my link speed. So this tells me that the switch port I'm connected to right now is advertising it can do 10, 100, 1000. We're connected at gig. My advertised duplex is half full, I'm connected at full. everything is working well. I've connected at 1 gig. It also tells me where I'm connected. So in this case, it tells me that I'm connected to Studio Switch 1. It tells me which port I'm connected to, and it will even grab the description out of that port. So if we've assigned a description in the configuration, it'll grab that out. It says, you know, what the contact information is, how it discovered that. So it starts giving me a good picture of where I'm connected. And this is especially nice if you're connecting to a connection that's underneath a desk and you can't see where that connection goes. Maybe you can't even see the wall plate. Now we know which switch port we're connected to. I can see that I got my DHCP address, my DNS, and I'm connected to my default gateway. Well, that's great. And I'll tell you what, on the LinkRunner AT 2000, we could connect up and we could see a lot of this information. On the G2, I could see something that was very similar to this. But here's some of the big differences. Number one, I can come in, I can add comments, I can add unlimited test targets. So we're going to go in, we're going to take a look at what those test targets can do for us. Now, the other big difference when it comes to the auto test on the LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000 is the fact I can predefine all of these different profiles, and then I can come in and I can select them. So depending on what type of testing I want to do, I could come in and select a profile for that. So for example, if I wanted to check to make sure that VLAN 10 was working properly from this connection, I could come in and I could select VLAN 10. Actually, I want to make sure both 10 and 20 are working. Notice that it's got both profiles in there. So now when I hit start, what it's doing is it's going in and it is connecting using a tagged packet for VLAN 10. So I could expand that and I could see that I connected on VLAN 10 and I got an IP address, and that's the correct IP address for VLAN 10. So we'll come back. VLAN 10 worked. Now, once 10 completes, it's going to run 20. So it will go through and it will run all of these different profiles, one right after the other. And I can see that the little link cable here is green. That tells me all the tests that I ran within there work. So if I have ports that I expect will support multiple VLANs, I can come in and I can plug into that port. I can run a profile where it is testing all of those VLANs on that port. And what I'll find is when it uploads this information to Link Live, that it will link all those together to show that they all ran as part of the same profile. Very quick and easy way to validate that that port is working the way I expect it to. Now, I'm going to come back into my configuration and we're going to turn this off. Okay. We're going to come down here, and here I want to check and make sure the PoE is working okay. Now I'm going to select PoE Class 8. Now the LinkRunner AT 3000, 4000 support up to Class 8 PoE. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change to a different cable. So we'll come here. I'm going to grab this cable right here that is connected up to my Class 8 PoE injector. I'm going to plug that into the top of the tester, and it automatically, when it sees that there is a switch connected at the other end, it is automatically going to go in and start running that test. Now we see we've got that green lightning bolt right there. That green lightning bolt tells me that I successfully got my Class 8 PoE. Now, because it's doing the true power test, what it's doing is it is measuring the voltage without a load on it. So our unloaded voltage was 55.5. Now, when we applied the 71.3 watts of current draw for Class 8, we see that that voltage came down to 53.4, which was still within the range we needed. So now I know I'm getting class 8 PoE out of here. Now, why is that so important? Well, if we come back over here and we move our cables around just a little bit. So I'm going to change a couple cables on the patch panel right there. I am going to run that test again, and let's see how our PoE works out for us. Uh-oh. So now we have a red lightning bolt, and we are not getting our class 8 PoE. We did get a DHCP address. Now, when I look at this, what I find is that I only got 50 watts, and my voltage came down to 45.2. Now, what happened here is this is running through copper-cladded aluminum wire. So by being able to actually draw that current, we can find out if we have problems where we have too much resistance along the line or something's going on that's causing us to not get the power that we expect out of that connection. Now, let's flip over here. I'm going to switch back to my other connection. And we are going to come back out to our profiles. I'll stop that because there's no way we're going to get class 8 PoE out of that one. So I'm going to change my profile. And let's talk about the ability to detect 10 gig. So there are times where I want to see, can this switch support a speed higher than 1 gig? Now we will link at 1 gig, but we can detect speeds higher. So let's just move a cable here. We'll move that up to our 10 gig switch. We'll plug that in. And I'm going to select Detect N-base-T, and this is an option that we can turn on within our configuration. So I'll go ahead, drill into that, and I'll hit Start. So now what's happening is it is looking for that fast link pulse. It's listening. It's seeing what that switch can advertise. So this is telling me that the switch I'm connected to is advertising that it supports 100, 1 gig, 2.5 gig, 5 gig, and 10 gig. So I know that this switch is 10 gig capable. And if I needed to connect at 10 gig, that's where a tool like the LinkRunner 10G comes in. This tells me I've got it, and it will link up, and I can see that I can get out there and get an address, and it tells me what switch port I'm on. So it gives me some really good information about our connectivity right there.
Hey, Mike. So talking about N-base-T detection, we have another poll for everyone with another question for you guys. So basically, hey, as Mike said, the new models can detect link speeds of 2.5, 5, 10 gigs too. It's not limited to 1 gig like before. So we're wondering, what percentage of your Ethernet access network supports multi-gig speeds? So we're going to launch the poll here pretty quickly, and we'll give you 1 minute to provide your answers. And hey, let me know. Okay, so interesting so far. Okay, well, we can see some changes now. Okay, yes, it's changing quickly here. Okay, yeah. Okay, it seems like we may be done. Yeah, there's more changes there, still moving. Okay. So far, it seems like at least 46% of you guys, less than 25% of your network supports multi-gig speeds. Meanwhile, 29%, almost 30%, says that between 50 and 75% of the network supports multi-gig. We have 17% with a, that change again. Now we got the 20%. That says between 25 and 50% of your network supports multi-gig. It seems like we're getting more responses here. Still, yeah, seems about the same balance though. But it seems like the use of multi-gig has increased a little. We even almost have 10% of you guys that which your network is supports multi-gig for more than 75% of it. Yeah, I've heard personally talking to some people that there's a lot of networks, maybe not the majority yet, that are moving to multi-gig basically almost all the way. So it's interesting to see that almost 9-10% of you guys already have more than 75% of the network using multi-gig speeds. So anyway, I think that's it on all the responses. From what I can see, there's no more movement here. So we're going to close the poll. Thank you very much for that. And now I'll let you go back to Mike.
All right. So another piece of this is fiber testing. So if we come over here to the bench, we now have the fiber connection, a fiber connection hooked up to the SFP on the top of the unit. This supports a 100 meg and gig SFP. So we're going to come back and I am going to start my fiber test. So we'll go ahead and hit start right here. We see that we've established a connection at 1 gig on our fiber port. We've gotten our IP address, gives us that same information about what switch port we're connected to. So let's look at the details that we get about our fiber connection. Now I'm going to come in and clear this reference right here. So it's telling me details about the SFP that I have plugged in here. I'm using a multi-mode SFP that supports multi-mode, single mode. We're running at 850 nanometers. The big one that this gives me right here is my receive power. Now, every optic has a receive sensitivity, and this is the amount of light it has to receive in order to be able to connect. So if I have a device that's having a hard time connecting at the end of a fiber connection, I can take my LinkRunner AT 3000 or 4000 out, connect it up, and test it. The other thing is, the tester doesn't care a lot about what SFP you put in it. So what I like to do is if I'm getting ready to hook up a new switch, a router, anything using fiber, what I like to do is take the SFP I'm going to be using in production, pop it into the tester, and then go in and do my testing. So now not only do I know my fiber's working well, but I know my SFP is working well as well. Now, if I want to measure the optical loss across a connection, one of the features that we have in here is set reference. So what I can do is when I tap on set reference, it records this optical signal strength right here. Now, if we come back over to the bench and hold on, I'm going to switch up here to the patch panel. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, let me bump that camera over just a hair. The other direction, yep, there we go. I'm going to take that fiber connection out of the top of the tester. I'm going to plug that into a fiber patch right here. We're going to run that through 200 meters of fiber. So now I'm coming to the other end of that 200 meters. I'm going to plug that in. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go back and I'm going to run my test again. Okay. So we're going to go back. We're going to run that test again. Now, when I come in and look at my optical power meter right there, what this does, it shows my power difference. This is the amount of loss that I'm measuring across that link. So this allows me to get a rough idea of how much loss I'm seeing across my fiber connection. And this can be really useful for troubleshooting, maybe why a link isn't coming up. Okay. So one more thing I want to show you before we leave this, and that is that if I come out here to my AutoTest profiles, I'm going to unselect this. I'm going to go to OfficeNet, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to run that profile. Now, just as a note, with these profiles, I can upload these to Link Live. So I can take this whole group of profile tests right here and save them. So if I'm going from site to site to site to site, I can take that group of tests, bundle it together, and save it for that site. Then I can go to the next site, load up the test for that site. So now I can go in and build this. In this case, what I wanted to show you was that for each one of these tests, we can set up an unlimited number of test targets. So in this case, what I've done is I've set up a test to test both of the color printers I have here on my network, my black and white printer, my network attached storage, my PBX, the NetAlly website, Link Live. Now, when I go to set up these test targets, I can see that, for example, with my NAS, I'm connecting to port 445 of that NAS. So we can come in and set those up. I could even click on add. I could add a new test target. I could either select one that's already been created, and these can be used in multiple profiles, or I can add a ping test, a TCP connectivity test, an HTTP test, or an FTP test in here. All right, so let's leave the auto test. And we're going to come out here, we're going to go to the switch test. Now, sometimes all I want to know is what's my connectivity to the switch. So with the switch test, what it's going to do is it's going to use the information based on the current profile or the last profile in the list, and it is going to give me that information. So I can just say, hey, rerun that. And it's going to show me where I'm connected, port. It's going to show me my signal strength. And so in this case, it is showing me my optical information. If I came over, let's just switch over here real quick. I'm going to switch from fiber. I'm going to switch back to copper. Let me make sure I'm on the right copper connection there. So as soon as I plug that in, it runs that, and now it tells me my copper information, and it tells me about that switch. Now, if that profile, which we can just tap on right there, were to include PoE, which we'll turn on right here, I'll hit rerun that. When I do that, now not only is it going to test my connectivity, but it is also going to test my PoE and show me what my unloaded, loaded voltages are, my wattage, and which pairs are being used. So that gives me a lot of information about that. Now, sometimes cabling becomes an issue. So let's come back out here to the home screen, and I'm going to go to cable test. Now, before I do that, I'll come over here and I'm going to disconnect from that. And as Julio mentioned, I can come in and I can use the wire map port on the side to test a patch cord. So before I use this patch cord for doing any testing, we're going to run a cable test on it. And we're going to come in and we're going to see whether that cable's good. It tells me that cable's approximately 5 feet long. All the pairs are good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move up here for just a second. We're going to come up here to the patch panel. I'm going to plug one end of that into a link, and I'm going to grab one of my wire view adapters. I'm going to plug that into the other end, and we're going to rerun that test. So now what we're doing is we're testing that cable that we're running through there, and that tells me that that cable is approximately 296 feet long. So that's the longest permanent link we can have. Now, one of the features that this has that some of the other testers didn't is the ability to test shielded cable. So I'm going to grab this chunk of shielded cable right here. We're going to replace that thin patch cord with the shielded patch cord. I'm going to go ahead and run that test again. And we're going to see that now that SH down there, it's telling me that shield is working. So if I'm using shielded cable, which I have a shielded cable here, it will show me that my shield is working properly in there. Okay. A few other things that we can do with the cable test is we can turn on the IntelliTone or an analog tone. Now, if I happen to have an IntelliTone, I can come in here and I can use that to trace that cable out, or if I have an analog toner, we'll switch this over to analog and we will send a 400 megahertz or 400 hertz tone. Well, see, that's one of the challenges and why the IntelliTone is so nice. Is we do hear that tone, but we're picking up a lot of other interference as well. So we could go through, we could use this for doing toning. We could use it for doing that other testing. Now, we're going to come out and we're going to look at how we can use this as a reflector. So in this case, I can turn on my reflector. Now, I'm going to need to hook this back up to a link right there. I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Let's run an auto test. We're going to link this up to the network. We'll select a simple auto test. We'll start that. We'll get that connected up to the network. Okay. So we've got an IP address. So I can come out here to reflector, and I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Now what this is doing is this is waiting for a device with the performance test to connect to it. So I'm going to come back here to one of the ether scopes back here on the shelf, and I'm going to go to the performance test, and I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Now, what you see is that our bytes received and our bytes transmitted are going up. So what's happening is we are sending traffic at 1 gigabit per second from this ether scope back here. We're sending that to the LinkRunner, and the LinkRunner is sending it right back. So when we run this test, I can see that I had 0% packet loss, and I was able to get 1 gigabit per second full duplex between that LinkRunner and that ether scope back there. So those are some of the tools that we've got available on both the LinkRunner AT3000 and the LinkRunner AT4000. Now with the 4000, we also get our discovery, as Julio mentioned. And so if I come in and I tap on discovery, what we see is that we have discovered 121 devices here on the network. Now, what I've done is I've gone in and I've turned on SNMP. So under my discovery settings, I have set up my SNMP community strings. So it's able to go out, access the switches and routers and pull information from them. I've set up extended discovery ranges. So this is able to discover beyond just the local broadcast domain. It's using ping to go out and ping those, but one of the key things here is it's using the ARP caches from the routers, it's using the bridge forwarding tables from the switches to map out exactly where these devices are connected. So I can come in, I can select a device. how about my camera server right here? And I can tell you that that camera server is connected to the attic switch, get our port gig 4, and it's on VLAN 10. So now I know exactly where that's connected. I can take this discovery and I can upload that to Link Live. So I'll save that to my analysis files. I can then use Link Live to go in and map that out, see where devices are connected, and draw a topology of my network. Path analysis, we can come in with path analysis. I can select a target. I can hit start. This will show the path I'm taking at layer 2 through my network, and then we switch over to layer 3. So in this case, we see that we come out of my LinkRunner AT 4000 into port 3 of my switch here on the bench, out port 10, in port 6, out port 20 or 26, out 24, into my router, back into my into there, and then off I go through my network. Now that split route tells me that I'm taking multiple paths through the internet, but this will trace its way all the way out there till we get to the device at the very end. Okay. So path analysis allows me to look at that. We have packet capture. So I can come in here, I can select packet capture, I can select the size of that packet capture, I can set up filters on that capture, and I can hit start. Now, one of the things I found that's very handy when I'm going in and doing a packet capture with this is here I've taken just this little $25 TP-Link switch, and I've set up port mirroring on it. So now I can place this switch in line between the device I'm interested in and the device that I need to get to and get out there. Okay. So these are some of the things that we can do with that as far as packet capture goes. We'll go ahead and stop that. One of the really powerful features with the packet capture is I can now take and I can say I want to save that to Link Live. When I save that capture, it uploads that capture to Link Live. So now anybody within my Link Live organization can go in and take a look at that. All right, we've got iPerf, we've got the App Store. I know that we're out of time. So Julio, is there anything else important that you would like me to touch on in here?
Well, Mike, thank you very much for that. Let me see. So let me check the questions. There's been a lot of questions, Mike, but since we were a little short of time, and that was my fault, I ran over, guys. I was supposed to take 10 minutes with the slide and I went too far there. But we've answered most of the questions already. Still, there's a few I think you can help us with. Let me see if I can find them pretty quickly on the list. So one of them is, do you have like a video on how to perform end-to-end fiber testing?
Well, when it comes to, so Lambert would be one of the tools that we could use for that, where we could put a device at the other end of our fiber link and do a Lambert test. In fact, if you dig around enough on the NetAlly website, also you'll find where Dan Klimke, who's on this webcast as well, and I did a Lambert test through Bananas, and we were able to show what kind of throughput we got through there. But in this case, one of the things that I could do is I could take and connect a device. So if you go out and search for videos on Lambert, you will find that there's some videos out there on how we can use that to validate both copper and fiber networks. One of the things that's really unique about Lambert is because it sends the packets, we can have different media in the middle. So I just had a call recently. Someone was having trouble with media converters. We're able to put a device at each end and then do a Lambert test through the media converters, through the fiber, and then all the way to the copper on the other end.
Nice. And we got a few more questions here. I think I can answer the first one. Yep, and I think Dan already did that on the background. But yes, the question was, can we learn more about app support and if someone can make or install a custom app on the unit? The answer is yes. If you have your own homegrown app, you can basically just take that APK for the app and through your Link Live account, push it to your unit, and it'll be available for your unit only. So it's not like it will be shared with anyone else. Notice that you can also ask for other third-party apps. So if there's an app that you use a lot and you want us to add it to the App Store, we can also make it available on the App Store. Another question here, and this one, Mike, you may be able to help with. Is there a list of recommended third-party apps for testing fiber links?
As far as third party on the tester, no. I mean, it really, when it comes to testing fiber with this, what we're looking at, and a lot of it has to do with that we're working with the SFP. So we are limited to what the SFP can do. And when it comes to that SFP, we're looking at optical signal strength, which our switch app is going to give you. We can set reference in there so that we can measure loss over a fiber link. So in both of those cases, it really is a combination of that AutoTest and switch app that are going to give us the most insight into the fiber.
Yeah, one thing to add, and Mike is completely correct, is that and I mentioned this earlier, there's an option to add a fiber inspection camera. And there's a few different brands here. We don't want to talk about other brands, but you do have the option of, if those fiber inspection cameras have like their own apps, to install the app on the unit and then use your fiber inspection camera or your USB-C or USB-A fiber inspection camera that way too. A question here, and I guess this has come up a few times now. Is that banana test on YouTube? Yes, it is. The link, Dan just posted the link on the QA section. So if you guys, after watching this live webcast, want to watch the banana test or the banana video, feel free to watch it. It is pretty interesting. I personally was very impressed on the kind of stuff you can do by running an Ethernet cable through a banana. So
I just ran an iPerf test, by the way, while we're talking. This is running to a test accessory that is on the shelf back behind me. What we find with iPerf, because it runs within software as compared to the reflector, it will max out at about 500 to 600 megabits per second. But it's a great way that we can use this in combination with either a test accessory or any other server running iPerf 3.
Yep, good point. Okie doke, Mike. So I think that's the last of the questions. And as I said, Dan did a great job. Thank you, Dan, in the background there, helping with the questions, because there was a lot of them. So one question I have for you guys, and to end before we end the session, is one final poll. So we talked about a lot of new features on the LinkRunner AT 3000 and 4000. So which of the features we talked about you like the most? So I'm launching the poll, and this is the final question for you. And let's see what you guys think of some of those features. And there might be some here that we talked about that we didn't add to the poll, but you were just curious about these ones. Okay, some interesting answers in here. While the poll is running, there's one more question that came up. And it says, does the switch app reside on the NXG unit? The answer is yes. As of version 2.5 of the software, the switch app will be included or will show up on your Etherscope NXG. Still, if you've been using the Etherscope for some time, since we don't want to change the configuration on your home screen, it will be added to the apps section. So just swipe up from the home screen and you'll find the switch app in there, and you can drag and drop it into the home screen and just place it where you want. Notice that if you acquire a new Etherscope that hasn't been customized with your own apps and so on, then the switch app will show up on the home screen by default. Okie doke, and we can see the poll here. I think where it's mostly done, and it seems like, well, we have like a two winners here. 35% of you guys like the path analysis app. 35, under 35, the discovery and topology mapping. Funny enough, both those apps are like tied together by a discovery technology in there. So you could say that 70% of you like that new feature. Wi-Fi connectivity and third-party apps, 19%. That's pretty interesting. And then 10% for the 24-hour ping and TCP test. Well, I think that's all the answers we will get there. So I'm going to close that. And I think that's all the time we have for questions. We did run a little over, but I thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Also, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Dan, in the background for helping answer all those questions. And hey, guys, if you have any other questions for us, you know where to find us. Feel free to chat with us in social, ask any questions. You can go to our website and contact us if you want. Or many of you, I'm sure, if you're here in Utah, I'm just going now back to the UATN conference. So you can find us there and ask questions. Else, I'll see you on our next webcast. Thank you very much for joining.